So, you've probably seen numerous videos from numerous different content creators on how Xbox has really stepped things up to start this brand new generation of gaming. And in fact, maybe you've seen some of my videos talking about it. But with this video, I wanted to really dive in deep to what I'm seeing from Xbox to start this generation. I want to talk about things like Game Pass, first party studios, new IP, old IP. I really just want to talk about all of it in one go in this one video. So let's jump right into it and talk about some Xbox. So I think the first thing we have to really talk about and acknowledge is the fact that this turnaround for Xbox starts well before this generation. And in fact, it starts not long after the introduction of last generation. And I am of course referring to the introduction of Phil Spencer as the head of Xbox back in 2014. Because before Phil Spencer, we had obviously Don Matrick, and he, I think, was poised to really be the end of Xbox. But thankfully, Phil Spencer came in and was up for the task of rebuilding a nearly completely crumbled Xbox division. And it's his vision from then on that has led Xbox to this point. I mean, keep in mind, back at the start of the Xbox One generation, Xbox only had like 5 studios. And now you can compare that to where they are now, where they have like 23 studios, some of which are working on multiple projects at a time. 2021 is certainly a stark contrast for Xbox from where it was in 2013. And really, it's thanks to Phil Spencer's vision. And then you have things like Game Pass, which was started back in 2017 and has been built up to crazy levels of success. What started as a pretty good deal is now undeniably the best deal in gaming, period. There isn't a better deal than Game Pass right now. I pay $15 a month to have access to nearly 300 games at any time and now any place thanks to xCloud and Game Pass PC. And when you factor in that they are now adding third-party games day and date to the service like MLB The Show 21 and Outriders, you've got to think that this is only the beginning for Game Pass. Because Microsoft has the money to keep making these third-party deals for Game Pass. And in fact, there's already a rumor that there's going to be a big AAA third-party FPS game headed to Game Pass at launch later this year. And I mean, if you do the math, there's really only 2, maybe 3 options it could be. The most obvious and likely one being Battlefield 6. And that's because Battlefield has always had marketing deals with Xbox in the first place, and now you factor in the fact that Xbox is getting pretty cozy with EA after bringing EA subscription service into Game Pass Ultimate. Then you consider the fact that Microsoft has the kind of money where they can just hand EA a blank check and tell them to write down what they think Battlefield is worth on the Xbox platform. And the only other 2 options would be Call of Duty or maybe Back 4 Blood. And let's be real for a second, Activision loves PlayStation too much to cut deals like this with Xbox, so we can pretty much count out Call of Duty. But if I'm being completely honest, I'd rather it be Back 4 Blood than Battlefield 6, but you can bet that I'm going to be there day one for Battlefield 6 multiplayer if it launches in Game Pass. But what's funny is I'm talking about all of this cool third-party content potentially coming to Game Pass, and I've yet to acknowledge those 23 studios that Xbox has that are hard at work on delivering next-gen experiences on the Xbox platform. And the fact that every single one of those games will launch day and date on Game Pass. I mean, way over half of my most anticipated games from this generation are from Xbox Studios. I mean, obviously first is Halo Infinite, but then there's a game like Avowed, which is right up my alley because I love fantasy RPGs. And then you got Fable, which is another one of my most anticipated games. And then you got shooters like Perfect Dark, obviously Gears is going to continue. You got Forza Horizon 5, Hellblade 2, and then you've got all your big Bethesda games like Wolfenstein, Doom, Dishonored, Starfield, Elder Scrolls, Fallout. I mean, there's a ton of games coming from old IP and new IP. And speaking of new IP, I'd be willing to bet that we see plenty of that over this generation for Xbox. And the reason I say this is because the risk of creating something new and different is much less than it normally would be because of Xbox Game Pass. Think of a game like Grounded, for example. I know plenty of people who would have never bought that game, but then they see it in Game Pass and figure, why not try it? And then they try it and end up loving it. Like, Grounded is a really good example because it has a super loyal and strong community of players, and it's just a super small game made by a small, passionate group of developers at Obsidian. And this conversation actually is pretty topical right now because I think it's the exact opposite from what we're seeing from Sony. Because in my last video, I talked about the news of Sony squashing a Days Gone sequel. And not just that, but then also giving Naughty Dog the task of remaking the original Last of Us. And those two moves, to me, say that they are not interested in taking risks right now. Meanwhile, you have Xbox greenlighting these passion projects from small teams inside of bigger studios, and that's because of Game Pass. They can afford to take those risks, and sometimes it's gonna work like Grounded, and sometimes it won't work like Bleeding Edge. But what's important is that they're willing to do this stuff. And they're willing to support these new projects and bring new IP to life for a new generation of gamers. And that's what makes gaming exciting. It's what makes Xbox extremely exciting for me right now, because gaming gets a lot less exciting when all you have to look forward to is sequels and remakes. And does this mean that I'm saying old IP is bad? Hell no, I'm not saying that. I mean, my most anticipated game of the entire generation is Halo Infinite. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with old IP. Just look at what Sony Santa Monica did with their reboot of God of War in 2018. Or look at what the Initiative is doing with their Perfect Dark reboot. Or what about Playground Games rebooting Fable? I mean, there's plenty of stuff that can be done to keep old IP fresh and interesting. All I'm saying is I'm expecting a heavy mix of both old IP and new IP from Xbox this generation. And since we're already sort of talking about games right now, I figured we should talk about the variety of games that Microsoft is set to offer this generation. It's honestly kind of nuts when you think about it, but Xbox games go from a lighthearted fun game like Sea of Thieves or Grounded all the way to something dark and terrifying like Hellblade. And then you've got everything in between that. It's honestly why Xbox has always been my platform of choice. They've got multiplayer, they've got shooters, they've got racers, and now with Obsidian, Ninja Theory, Bethesda, Arcane, Machine Games, and id Software, they have some of the industry-leading storytellers for single-player experiences. Not to mention the fact that Xbox is pretty much the home of Western RPGs now, with what is basically the holy trinity of Western RPGs: Bethesda, Obsidian, and inXile Entertainment. They've really got all their bases covered for this generation, and that's extremely exciting for me. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this generation ends up blowing the 360 generation out of the water, just in terms of sheer quality and quantity of content. But this is all just my thoughts on Xbox. Let me know in the comments what all of you think about Xbox right now. Do you agree with me or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments what you think. Leave a like if you liked the video, and remember to hit that subscribe button because we're almost to 150 subscribers, and holy shit, that is awesome. Because if I can just be honest and kind of rant for a second, I started this channel with the sole intention of just making content for myself. Like, I wanted to make stuff that I personally would watch. I had zero expectations for this channel to hit even like 100 subscribers in the first year. That was like way out of the realm of possibility in my mind. And here we are with just a little over a year on YouTube, and we're sitting at about 145 subscribers. So, I mean, thanks to everyone who's watching and everyone who subscribed and supported the channel this past year, because you're all amazing, and I love that you're all enjoying the content. Because I know for me personally, I'm really enjoying making the content. But until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.